The northern foothills of California's Sierra Nevada was a land once shared with a people called today the Concow Indians. For many centuries, this land and its people lived together in harmony. The Indians are mostly gone now, and their home has become a shattered memory of its former beauty. Its arteries are clogged with dams and its body scarred and ruptured from logging and mining activities of modern man. Some of the original plants and animals are gone too, replaced by pastures and animals of the newcomers of a century or so ago. As the Sierra struggles to survive this onslaught of modern man, so do a few of its Indians, and from them comes a whisper of the past. They tell of a different kind of relationship between man and nature than exists today, for the Concow saw this land as a natural garden, and themselves as part of its ecosystem. Indeed, it is said that the word Concow means garden. The natives here referred to themselves as the Concow Mida, or people of the garden. Never having been granted a reservation in their own country, the Concow were scattered and decentralized during the gold rush of the 1850s. Only a few have managed to live in these hills in recent years. It is from these people that one can catch a glimpse of prehistoric times. The few of these old-time Indians who are left tend to live in remote and obscure places, capturing what they can of the old lifestyle and its philosophy. There are fewer of these old people to talk to with every passing year. This abandoned cabin marks the end of centuries of Indian habitation. Here was the home of one such old-timer, Brian Beavers. Brian was reared a few miles from this site in a remote Indian camp, having spent his childhood with Indians so old that they had been in this country before the arrival of white man. From these people, whose memories stretched back into prehistoric times, Brian could speak fluently of the old days. Both Brian and the cabin are gone now. The Indian called to the spirit land of his ancestors, and the cabin bulldozed away by the utility company that now lays claim to this land. Much of what is contained in this film was taught by Brian Beavers. As his friendly ghost walks across this screen, Brian might say in the Concow language, "Wano kawano sup, I die but I don't die." Few places on earth have been so kind to its native peoples as these Sierra foothills and the valley below. About 200 wild plants and 150 animals are known to have been used by these Indians. From natural resources, the Concow enjoyed a standard of living that would be the envy of most of the world's people today. From these resources, the Indians made a great many things. They did a little trading, too. From the west came beads made of clamshells, and from the north, the Concow traded for obsidian, with which to make knives and arrow points. It took a lot of education to be a Concow. Each Indian had to be an encyclopedia of knowledge, ranging from knowing the difference between edible and poisonous plants to how to build a house. Concow houses were substantially built and might last for many years. Each family built its own house, often of cedar bark, partially underground and partially covered with dirt. Cedar bark repels water, does not decay readily, and is an excellent insulator. These homes maintained an even comfortable temperature the year round. Some of the houses were made larger for ceremonial purposes. People not farming a land usually have available to them a much greater variety of wild plants. Here are foods, medicine, cosmetics, tools of all kinds. The Indians had a reverential attitude toward plants and would talk to them as they harvested, and would normally leave a little gift to the plant, such as a bead or feather. It was said that a tree or shrub not regularly harvested would cease to produce. The Concow tended toward a specialization of labor between the sexes. Men hunted and engaged in what little politics food gatherers have. The men engaged more in ceremonial life than did the women. Women tended more to domestic chores. They were superb botanists, knowing hundreds of plants, and did most of the wild plant food gathering. Let us explore a bit of this Concow country and its lore with Brian Beavers. This is the North Fork of the Feather River at an elevation of about 2,000 feet. One important plant for the Concow is redbud, used for basket making. Its bark gave an attractive red design. The shrub was valued by basket makers elsewhere and was a trade item where the plant did not grow. Young straight saplings are required in basket making, so the redbud was kept thinned out. Women would return year after year to carefully tended plants. The slender shoots were skillfully split so that some wood adhered to the bark. Finished baskets would show a red design on one side and show a white design on the other. The Concow also decorated baskets with a black design. This came from the root of a fern found in swampy places. The roots of ferns sometimes extend for several feet, are soft and pliable, and woven into the basket design. These folk were always careful never to exhaust plants in one area, but to leave some for continued growth. They were serious conservationists. The Concow were among the finest basket makers in the world. Their handicraft can be seen today mostly limited to museums and a few private collections. The Concow are part of a larger tribal area called the Maidu, a corruption of the Indian word Maida, which means simply people. Deerbrush, or California lilac, a member of the genus Ceanothus, yields an edible seed, important to the Concow because it appears early in the summer. The seeds need to be soaked in water and heated in the sun so that the bitter covering will fall away. The leaves are also edible. The Indians say that there was at least one use for every plant in the Sierra. To make plants useful to the Indian was the world maker's intention when he placed them there. The world maker's Concow name is Wanami, the immortal one. Some of the plants of Wanami had many uses. From wild grapes came lashings with which to tie together poles of house frames. Even bridges were made from these vines. It was a favorite pastime of the children to clamber about a shady tree that supported these vines, sometimes for hours enjoying the small but tasty fruit. Bear grass is another plant with several uses. Its pollen is said to be poisonous, but the bulb may be roasted and eaten. The bulb mixed with other ingredients was once used to make a powerful glue, a technique now lost. Its fibers make a soft, pliant basket, or if mashed with water, can be worked into mats. Some unheralded experimenter in the distant past discovered that the root of this fern is a good kidney medicine. Through centuries of trial and error, with sometimes fatal results, folk around the world have discovered the medicine and poison that exist in plants. Anyone who's explored the Sierra has seen mortar holes where women ground acorns and seeds into flour. Acorns is the single most important food of these folk, demanded a great deal of their time. Picture several women seated here, singing an acorn grinding song as they work sociably together. Plants that were used for roots or bulbs would be difficult to find as the upper growth disappeared. Saplings were bent into distinctive shapes as markers. Some of these have now grown into trees, interesting features to watch for in Concow country. Calicortus has the common name of pussy ears or cat's ears because the petals are hairy at the base. One of the lily family, it tends to be lumped with other wild lilies as Indian potatoes. The bulbs were much in demand by Indians. Their energetic digging for these bulbs in early summer probably led to California tribes being called by the derogatory term digger Indians. The bulbs are delicious either raw or roasted and nutritious. Like most of the bulb plants in the Sierra, this lily is becoming increasingly rare due to heavy grazing and ecological changes such as the growth of manzanita. This ginger root was called by the Concow little dove's medicine.
That's what it's for. It's eye medicine. It's not so strong as that this wormwood, you know. I guess it's better. More people use this one down here for eyes. More old Indians, I mean.
Here's a member of the thistle family called yarrow or squirrel tail. It is not only a medicine plant, but has been used all over the world. When the plant is in flower, the leaves are collected and made into tea, causing perspiration, and is said to reduce fever and congestion. Angelica, a curry in various places in the United States and playing an important part to the Indians. Concow called it magicals. Some old-timers still carry a bit of its aromatic root with them as good luck charms. During ceremonies, the root is powdered and scattered in the fire for its magical powers. The root was also smoked as an aid for sinus problems. Fresh young sprouts were happily devoured. The juice, mixed with saliva, is claimed to be an eye medicine. Floppy leaves suggested the name mule ears to this plant. Growing above the 4,000-foot snow level, the plant was available only during the summer. The seeds could be ground into flour or eaten raw or used as soup flavoring. The young stalks are quite tasty, and it is claimed will produce lactation in mothers having difficulty nursing. Foods to be roasted were wrapped in the large leaves, which could also be used as diapers. It is said doctors smoked the root as an aid for their curative powers. This was Indian hemp. Its primary value to the Concow was as a source of string. Fibers were made into fishing nets, bow strings, and other uses. One strand, it is said, can hold 6 pounds. The sap or milk can be squeezed into a shallow mold, allowed to harden and shaped into needles. The juice from this species is recognized as a lotion for cuts, sores, and to remove warts, freckles, and other blemishes of the skin. Of several species of milkweed, at least one was brought north to this area by the early Europeans. In the old days, Indians tattooed themselves by using milkweed juice as a paste to hold soot into place while it was pricked into the skin. As the richness and dignity of the ancient Concow culture becomes an ever-fading memory, so do many aspects of the Sierra Nevada foothills. In Aboriginal times, there was a higher water table, more springs and meadows than at present. There was less chaparral and underbrush due to the Indian practice of burning the areas where they lived each fall and winter. Indians preferred open grassy oak savanna country, which produces a greater variety of foods and grazing animals. Recent disappearance of several plants and animals has set off a chain reaction that may be considerably modifying the Sierra ecosystem. A glimpse into Concow past may be made by studying their medicine plants for suggestions of what health problems may have plagued these people. The root of Dutchman's pipe was used as kidney medicine, a diuretic. This lupin contains poisonous alkaloids, but the Indians collected the leaves before the plant blossomed, steamed them, placed them in a stream overnight to leach out the poisons, and then mashed them and ate them with salt. And just as the Concow borrowed other folks' plants for their use, so did others like the Chinese and Spanish learn to brew this coyote mint or hill tea as a so-called blood purifier. Brian is walking through a patch of corn lilies. This is a poisonous plant, but the Concow made a poultice from its roots and swallowed pea-sized fragments as a cure for epilepsy. In this painting, a child has fallen out of its cradle basket and is in danger of becoming ill. But the child has grasped a medicine plant for protection from the spirit of respiratory disease hovering above. This portrayal was by Concow artist Frank Day. Another protective plant, sweet cecily, Osmerata nuda, when lashed about the legs, is said to protect one against rattlesnakes. So too is the wild rose repulsive to rattlesnakes, or so it is claimed. The Indians know that bees collect pollen and make honey. Indeed, they will sometimes attach a bit of white fluff on a bee so as to better follow its course to its hive. But it is also felt that bees collect plant odors as well. With the help of bees, it is thus safer to collect mushrooms in the vicinity of wild roses. Hummingbirds are also said to be odor gatherers. In this Frank Day painting, we can see how two hummingbirds are gathering the wild rose odor and narcotizing the rattlesnake. It will now be vulnerable to hawks or other predators. The Concow knew how to plant and to transplant, and around their camps existed horticulture, a few medicinal herbs perhaps, or a transplanted cedar tree whose boughs would be used in seasoning. But these Indians elected not to farm. The Concow believed that other creatures also farmed, for the ants in this painting are said to have planted the mushrooms which the Indian is harvesting. Ants gather scent, with reference being made to the strong odor of formic acid in these nests. A handful of nesting material held to the nostrils will put one asleep. Indians would hold food or a dry leaf close to the ants, picking up the formic acid as a seasoning or food called Indian vinegar. The nest itself, scooped up and burned, roasted the eggs for eating. Brian comes now to a field of checker lily, another of the lily family that is becoming rare. The bulb of this plant may be wrapped in the skin of a salmon and roasted until it liquefies and steams. Together, these two components make an extremely tough epoxy-like glue. Rolled in little balls and pierced with straw, while still soft, they also make beads. The California iris is another medicine plant specifically for toothaches. A small amount of the root placed against the tooth causes a few moments of intense burning-like sensation, like red pepper, as Brian put it, and then the tooth numbs. This plant should be respected and considered possibly dangerous owing to lack of scientific research. Indians other than the Concow have used iris in the making of very strong rope. Another plant not native to this area, the Indians soon learned that the leaves of digitalis, or foxglove, could be used as heart medicine. The thimbleberry produces edible berries, and its leaves make good diapers. Waname, the earth maker, was once escaping some enemies who tried to burn him up by setting all the plants on fire. On the thimbleberry grows a gall into which Waname could hide. Long after the fire was gone, the gall suddenly exploded and released Waname. These galls occur on most thimbleberries and in fact smolder for some time in a fire before exploding.
Catch salmon, been that way for years and years on the river, spawning there. Salmon come up and they used to catch them and dry them, and that's their place to fish. They go around there and the miners had to mine, they'd be mining while they just shoot them, And then the old people used to sometimes cry, and we used to say, "What's the matter, Grandma?" She cried. She said, "Well, white people killed a son or brother or something down there, and you can't nobody get down there because you go down there to get him to bury him, why shoot you too."
This lovely plant, called Indian pink, was used in a spring dance. The girls would put the flowers in their nostrils for decoration.
Hey, hey, lo, lemma, hiya, lo, lemma, hey, lo, lemma, hiya, lo, lemma, hey, no.
The Concow lifestyle, with their hundreds of wild foods, must have served them well, for many of these Indians lived to be over 100 years old. Columbine leaves are very bitter and sometimes poisonous unless properly prepared. The Indians would boil and leach the leaves, then roast them so that they were crusty on the outside but still soft on the inside. The leaf was also used as a rabbit call. One can put a leaf between the lips and breathing in cause it to flutter and sound like a male rabbit. The azalea offers a tasty treat by sucking the nectar from its flowers, but be sure there aren't any bugs in them. Despite the enormous quantity and variety of plant resources for these people, the Indians had to spend a great deal of time in food gathering and hunting and making the tools needed for food procurement and preparation. The Indians would pluck and eat foods as they walked along a trail, but these people also liked their foods cooked and seasoned.
Tule, 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 tule.
The rhizomes of this tiger or leopard lily may be roasted and eaten, but the plant also served as a cosmetic and a decoration. It was worn during the flower dance, and the flower held gently to the face will transfer its pollen onto the skin in an attractive design. A beautiful dogwood. The flowering of this tree gives evidence to the Indians that the spring mushrooms are ready to harvest.
Dogwood will make pretty good bow for bow and arrow, you know. You make pretty good just for a few days hunting or something, you know. You're supposed to last very long. You make pretty good though. It's a fine grain. It ain't coarse like pine. It's more like oak, you know. No grain maybe tall, just kind of a more like walnut and oak and that hardwood, you know, like that. See?
The Concow system of classifying plants considered the environment. This coffee fern, which favors dry, rocky slopes, is called rock fern in contrast to water ferns. Most of the plants claimed by the Concow to have curative powers have not been confirmed. The root of the alum root plant, when boiled into a tea, is said to make a fine tonic. Whether true or not, we don't know. This pretty blue-flowered plant is commonly called hound's tongue or blue buttons. The Indians called it coyote ear. The grated roots were used to draw out the inflammation from burns at scalds. The root is said to be beneficial in venereal diseases. A relatively rare tree in the Concow country, the California nutmeg. It was favored by men to increase their virility and was prepared by thorough roasting. Indians today leach these nuts before roasting them, and it is a favorite food for all. Some claim that it has a tranquilizing effect. The sharp leaves make good temporary needles. Steeping the leaf of the spice bush is said to make an eye medicine. Indian lore says the stick of this plant taken to bed by a man wishing a wife would see it turn into a bride during the night. The man would be tickled during this process, but if he laughed, the girl would change back to a stick. Old man Coyote tried this once, and in his greed took a whole bundle of sticks to bed.
Tied them all up nice and put them in bed with him, and way in the night they turned to girls, you know, and they began to tickle him. And so many of them that he couldn't stand it, you know. So, and of course, they'd already turned to girls. So he threw his arms around the whole bunch like as many as he could, and Nicky Ethel says, "This is my woman," he says. And just done like that, and started to laugh, you know, and it was tickling him, and his arms just come down this way, and all he had was a little bundle of sticks again. They all turned back to sticks. And they never would do that no more. You know, he spoiled it, see?
We are now looking at the elderberry, yielding not only fruit, but the material for the Concow's two most important musical instruments, a flute and clapstick. The flute is no longer made or played, and likely will never be heard again on this land.
The Spirit's going to give him a song, and this thing is supposed to be good, you know. He knows lots of songs, this clapstick, see? And so he sat there and he starts, you know, and he just starts. Like this, you know. I know in Noma, and I know in Noma, I know in Noma, and I know in Noma, and I know in Noma, and I know.
Although the Concow had many uses for manzanita, they feel there's too much of it in the foothills today. Manzanita was kept under control by periodic burning, but now it is threatening to crowd out other plant species. The berries were gathered when ripe and eaten raw or parched and used in pinole. Cider was made from the ripe fruit, crushed and strained through a sieve basket. An equal amount of water was added to the juice. Large quantities were dried and stored for winter. The pulp could be reduced to a fine powder and separated from the seeds and the skins. The dry wooden seeds were beaten into fine flour and molded into thin cakes and baked in the hot ashes. White folk in the foothills swear by manzanita as an excellent poison oak cure. One makes a weak tea and places the boiled leaves over the rash, which would heal in about 3 days. Cat's paws, a member of the buckwheat family, was another important food for the Concow. Flowers were sometimes eaten, and the seeds were blended with other seeds to make a flour. Concow have a rich vocabulary describing many different flavors and odors, which was one criterion for classifying plants. The rich, nutritious hazelnut may be collected in the fall. Quantities of these were stored as a supplemental food all winter into the spring. The gooseberry seems to have been more popular with children who would eat them directly off the bushes. Adults would sometimes gather quantities of these and singe off the bristles by shaking them in a basket with red-hot coals. The gooseberry ripens in late July and early August. From the floor of the Great Valley of California to the high Sierra meadows, the Concow had such a diversity of plant and animal food available to them that they were very well nourished. This is California laurel, or bay leaf. The highly aromatic and volatile leaves had several uses. They were drunk like coffee or used as a seasoning with baked salmon. One of the few plants cultivated by the Concow was this tobacco plant, rarely seen today. The Indians collected the seeds of the plant as it grew wild and scattered them about their villages. Brian Beaver's old cabin symbolized the two worlds in which the Concow Indians lived. Although built of logs in traditional European style, the roof was four-sided like an Indian house. And as the cabin has been bulldozed away to remove all signs of an Indian's occupation, perhaps there too lies a symbol of the Concow future. Time will tell.
Way